What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 10 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. And let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Real quick, before getting into our breakdown, a quick word from our partners at PrizePicks, which is our favorite DFS site of choice this NFL and fantasy football season. If you guys aren't familiar with them, do yourself a favor and check them out. In fact, when you sign up right now and use code ADP, you get a 100% deposit match up to $100. And look, we're already doing all this research for fantasy football matchups. So why not take advantage of it and get some profits as well? PrizePicks, well, they allow you to basically do exactly that. They have so many different player prop bets, not only in terms of single stat DFS, but also in terms of fantasy score. And you can combine them any which way you want. Super simple, super easy to use. All you have to do, choose two more players from the board, and then just pick the over-under on their projected fantasy score or on their single stat. Again, pretty much for every single matchup as the week progresses, those options will be updated even more so. And then the great thing is you've got two different options in terms of how you want to bet it, whether it's a flex play, so that way you can miss one of your selections but still win. Obviously, that's the safer choice. Or if you want more bang for your buck, check out the power play, where if you get all your picks correct, well, you win even bigger. So again, check all of that out. Details in the description. And we kick off Week 10 on Thursday night with the Ravens at the Dolphins. Here, I'm all right starting both the primary wide receivers for these teams right now. That is Marquise Brown for the Ravens, Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins. And Brown, honestly, he's been playing like a wide receiver one. In fact, a top 10 wide receiver, borderline top 5 guy, pretty much every single week. Those consistency issues that were plaguing him years prior don't seem to be all that big of a concern right now. He is the favorite target for Lamar Jackson and will be in the wide receiver one discussion yet again this week. For Miami, Jalen Waddle, yes, he's a rookie, but he is getting all the targets, primarily because a lot of these other Miami wide receivers are injured. That's why you don't really see any sits for the Dolphins, because Waddle is kind of all they have left, the most viable weapon. And that raises his floor, in the wide receiver 2 conversation. No Parker, no Fuller. I don't trust any of the other guys, especially if Tua doesn't play. It's going to be Waddle. It's going to be Gesicki at tight end. So, passing on the other guys. For the Ravens, Rashad Bateman and Watkins right now as sits. Maybe you're saying, how do you have Bateman as a sit? He's kind of been trending up slowly but surely. To me, this is if Sammy Watkins plays. If he doesn't, I'd be all right taking a chance on Rashad Bateman here. But if all 3 guys for the Ravens are active, not really sure how they're going to gel, how the targets are going to, play out. So for that reason, I'd probably be a little bit more cautious with that situation there. But if Watkins isn't available, I have no problem playing Bateman. I think you're going to get, at least in PPR leagues, at least 10 points from him. And he does have the big play upside for what that is worth. Next up, though, we've got the Saints at the Titans here. Another boom or bust play with Deontay Harris, in my opinion, for the Saints. And honestly, if you want to make the argument you shouldn't start a single New Orleans wide receiver, I really wouldn't have an issue with that. I think all these guys are way too inconsistent. I don't think they get enough volume. I have questions about Simeon. We'll see how long, he's still the quarterback for the Saints. But to me, Harris has the biggest play upside. He's getting targets, I think, more so consistently than Callaway and Stills, who, funny enough, both had touchdowns this last week. But again, I think they're more secondary guys on this offense, which honestly, I think just features Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, both at the running back position. So Harris, just big boom or bust potential, more standard suited. I don't mind the matchup. That's why kind of, I'd take a chance on him, but he's very much so kind of in that wide receiver 3 range, could even be a little bit lower if that boom doesn't hit. For the Titans, A.J. Brown. And even without Derrick Henry last week, the Titans took care of business versus the Rams. And we saw how involved A.J. Brown was. I think that's going to continue to be the case moving forward. Yes, the Saints have a tough defense, so Brown maybe belongs in the wide receiver 2 conversation, I would say, but the upside is there because of the volume. And then I do have Julio Jones as a sit. Yes, he knows the Saints very, very well. He's had a lot of success versus them in his days with the Atlanta Falcons, but he's just not getting utilized the same way enough versus, opposing teams when he's on the Titans. So I'm a little bit concerned there. And for that reason, I would probably sit him in this situation. Then Bills at the Jets. I'd start all the Bills wide receivers again. I said it last week versus the Jaguars. Now the Bills ended up losing, but all these three wide receivers in PPR scoring had above 10 points. So I think you've got similar type of upside here versus the Jets, and I think the Bills bounce back more importantly versus the Jets. So the upside is higher for all of these guys. Perform in PPR scoring. For the Jets, Corey Davis hopefully going to return. I've got him as a start. And then Jamison Crowder, to me, with Corey Davis reestablished, he is the number 2 guy there. Somebody in PPR formats that I would take a chance on. And yes, that means I have Elijah Moore as a sit, even though he broke out in an absolutely crazy way this last week. But in my opinion, with Corey Davis back, I think, Elijah Moore won't get as many opportunities, but we'll see. Maybe this will be kind of the turning point where he, takes over that Jamison Crowder role and emerges as the number 2 guy on this team. I'm just not 100% sure in that. We'll see who the quarterback is for the Jets. That's also a factor here. But as of right now, I'd be looking at Davis and Crowder. I think they should get a decent amount of opportunities versus the Bills in a game where the Jets will have to air it out. Afterwards, Lions at the Steelers. I'm only looking at the Pittsburgh wide receivers. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. Johnson, I love in PPR. I just love in general. Claypool, more standard suited. Great matchup versus the Lions. I think both these guys can absolutely blow up on the week. Wide receiver 2 range with much higher upside. For the Lions, I hate everybody here. It hurts me to say it, but whether it's Raymond, Amon-Ra St. Brown, doesn't matter. Whoever they add, the Steelers defense is for real. And the Lions, they're not the most consistent team, especially when it comes to airing out the football to their wide receivers. They more so do it via tight ends, via running backs. So I would sit Raymond and Amon-Ra St. Brown here. Moving on, Jags at the Colts. I'm starting Marvin Jones. As of late, it's kind of been the Dan Arnold show. And the Jaguars didn't really air it out all too much this last week versus the Bills in a game that was very, very close, low scoring. But I still think Marvin Jones has the highest upside here, highest touchdown upside, highest volume upside, highest yardage upside, absolutely highest upside in all regards as far as pass catchers are concerned. I do think he is, however, a low to mid-level wide receiver too, just because, Trevor Lawrence, a little bit banged up, rookie season, ups and downs, etc. Maybe Urban Meyer, you throw him into that equation. Just Marvin Jones, if he had a more consistent quarterback, I think his value would be rather higher. For the Colts, it's Michael Pittman. The guy's been an absolute stud so far this season. One of our favorite, targets in drafts back in August and September. He's played like a wide receiver one. I think he can continue versus the Jaguars, even with the Colts being a run-first team. I've got Laviska Shenault for the Jags as a sit. Really hasn't done much of anything, even post the DJ Shark injury. Then for the Colts, Zach Pascal, I have him as a sit. I think this is going to be a very run-heavy type of game for Indianapolis. Jonathan Taylor, and then just Michael Pittman and the tight ends for Indianapolis. And then T.Y. Hilton, if he plays, even though he's dealing with concussion issues. So I've got him as a sit either way, though, whether he plays or not, and same with Pascal. Then Bucs at Washington. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are absolute locks, especially since it looks like Antonio Brown will be missing some more time. Now, I do have him as a tentative start, but as you can see, asterisk next to his name. No official word, but my guess is he's going to miss this week. I wouldn't get cute with any of the other Tampa Bay wide receivers. To me, it's these 3 guys when they're healthy. And without Antonio Brown, I think Evans and Godwin both have, low-end wide receiver 1 upside. For Washington, it's just Terry McLaurin. It's always just Terry McLaurin. Even if Curtis Samuel returns, there's some rumors about that happening from his injury. I don't want to play him his first week back. I think this could be a blowout. And I really don't trust anyone other than McLaurin on this offense. Yes, he can be a bit boom or bust, but the Bucs secondary can be had. We'll see. It's going to come down to Heineke and how much he wants to target McLaurin. The upside is definitely there, so I would start him here, McLaurin that is. Afterwards, Browns at the Patriots. I'll take a chance on Jarvis Landry, Jacoby Myers. Honestly, though, I really don't like the wide receivers in this matchup. I think it stems from the fact that the quarterbacks don't really pass it all that much. Yes, the Browns absolutely put it on the Bengals this last week, but Baker didn't throw all that much. He's still got a bum shoulder. That's not just going to go away. And yes, I know DPJ, who I have as a sit, had that huge touchdown, led the wide receivers in terms of yards, etc. But Landry still had the most targets, the most catches, and to me, that's more valuable. Now, with that being said, you have to realize that with the Browns, these wide receivers, they're not wide receiver ones. There's some upside in there, but they're kind of that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range, and especially here in a game that I think could be lower scoring. For the Patriots, Myers, again, the Patriots didn't have to do all that much versus the Panthers, who kept shooting themselves in the foot, so they just kind of ran the ball. They didn't pass all that much. But Myers still getting the targets, similar to a Jarvis Landry. If it's standard scoring leagues, I would not touch Landry or Myers. And again, mostly in PPR, but if you made the argument that you want to sit pretty much every single wide receiver here, I wouldn't argue that too much either. And then again, DPJ is sit. Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar. I just don't think the Patriots or the Browns can sustain multiple fantasy relevant wide receivers. Moving on, Falcons at the Cowboys. We saw it with the Falcons, folks. I've been saying this. Russell Gage. Once he comes back, especially with the Calvin Ridley situation being what it is right now, him stepping away from football, the guy's going to be a steal. It took him a little bit once he came back from his injury, but I think he's the primary wide receiver right now for the Falcons, unless you want to say that's Cordero Patterson, depending on how you play him, running back or wide receiver. But the point being is I think Gage has mid-level wide receiver 2 upside. Yes, Zacchaeus is a guy that blew up this last week, but 2 touchdowns on 3 receptions. I don't think that's sustainable, so I'm sitting him there. Probably butchered that name, but we'll get it right in the future. The Cowboys, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, they both kind of flopped this last week, but I think that was a fluke game versus the Broncos. This Falcons defense doesn't scare me. I don't think it has nearly the same upside as the Broncos defense did, and I still don't know how they managed to pull off, blanking the Cowboys for so long, but Lamb still got insane targets for what that's worth. So I think both these guys bounce back. Yes, Malik Turner, similar to Zacchaeus, kind of had a huge game, but I think that was more so of a fluke, so I'm sitting him there, and Michael Gallup as well, even if he plays. Let's move on to the Panthers at the Cardinals. DJ Moore is remaining the only Panther wide receiver that I would trust. Now, key thing to keep an eye out for here, potentially Sam Darnold might not play, getting an MRI on the shoulder, which doesn't really matter. He's played so awful, but he has been going to DJ Moore, something to keep an eye out for. I think PJ Walker, maybe he'll make less mistakes, but he doesn't have the same passing upside as Darnold. I think Moore is in the wide receiver 2 category for the rest of the season. For the Cardinals, DeAndre Hopkins, if he plays, you start him. But there's a lot of kind of possibilities here. That's why I've got asterisks next to a lot of these names. Hopkins, he was hurt. Same with AJ Green this last week. Kirk had a big week. So basically what I'm saying here is if Hopkins plays, you start him. Then my next guy up would be Christian Kirk in this offense. If AJ Green plays, you start him as well. I'm not scared of this Panthers defense, especially not, the secondary as much as the rush defense. And I think at some point in time they will break, especially if Kyler Murray plays, which is also another thing to keep an eye out for. Does Kyler Murray play? If he doesn't, then I would take AJ Green out of this equation. So just a lot of injuries here to keep an eye out for. Hopkins, AJ Green, Kirk right now seemingly the only healthy guy here. Rondale Moore, though, is the odd man out by far. Even last week when he had all the opportunities, didn't really do all that much. Hasn't really done all that much other than like one kind of big game this season, so I'm fading him. And then Robbie Anderson hasn't done anything either. If Sam Darnold isn't available, I don't trust anyone outside of DJ Moore here, so I'm fading to a large extent everyone in this Carolina offense not named DJ Moore or Christian McCaffrey at running back. Afterwards, Vikings at the Chargers. I love both of those duos. For the Vikings, Jefferson, Adam Thielen. For the Chargers, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Keenan Allen, as of late, has kind of been trending as the wide receiver one, kind of like we thought on this offense. But I do think Mike Williams will bounce back. And, he was a little bit banged up, kind of maybe played through it. I still like the upside. For what it's worth, now might be a good time to try and trade for him. For the Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, it's the case every single week. I think this could be a high-scoring game. I like both of them here. I think all 4 of these wide receivers are in the high-end wide receiver 2 range, like worst-case scenario, and then obviously higher upside as well. Afterwards, we've got the Seahawks at the Packers. And with Russell Wilson expected to return in this game, I really like both the Seattle wide receivers again, Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I think this will be a high-scoring affair. I anticipate that Aaron Rodgers will return as well, so Devontae Adams a rock-solid start. I would, however, sit Lazard and Randall Cobb. I've said it all season long. I think the wide receiver 2 behind Devontae Adams is just way too inconsistent. Yes, I would put my money on Lazard, but kind of touchdown dependent, so no thank you there. Mainly Devontae Adams and then Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon at running back. Afterwards, Eagles at the Broncos. Devonta Smith, you saw last week why he is still somebody worth starting, but also why he's the only Philadelphia wide receiver worth starting. I continue to put Jalen Reagor as a sit, but honestly, I should probably just not include any other wide receivers other than Devonta Smith for the Eagles. Keep a note, however, he is boom or bust, so realize low floor, high upside when you play him, so I can't confidently say he's going to be in the high-end wide receiver 2 range or something like that. For the Broncos here, this Eagles defense doesn't scare me all that much. I honestly might be all right playing all these 3 guys. I think they have similar type of upside to maybe what the Bills could do versus the Jets, in that all these guys can put up at least 10 points in PPR. That's what I'm looking for here. And, I think one of these guys will get in the end zone as well. I think they'll be in the, worst case wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range. And then one of these guys will be a high-end wide receiver 2 as well. Then Chiefs at the Raiders, Tyreek Hill. We know the situation there. You continue to start him. Even though the Chiefs offense has been struggling and doesn't look like the Chiefs offense of old, same with Patrick Mahomes, Hill still has the upside. For the Raiders, Hunter Renfrow, he got a lot of targets this last week. I think he can be a mid-level wide receiver 2 for the remainder of the season, especially in PPR formats. I'm not worried about Bryan Edwards. I'm not worried about the addition of Deshaun Jackson. I think he's past his prime. So to me, it's Hunter Renfrow and Tyreek Hill here for the Raiders and the Chiefs, respectively. Didn't even list Demarcus Robinson or Mecole Hardman here, just because, again, this Chiefs offense has been questionable other than Tyreek Hill and then Travis Kelce. I can't really trust anyone at this point in time. Moving on, Rams at the 49ers. You start Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods every single week, especially Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Robert Woods has been trending up in recent weeks. I think that the Rams bounce back this week. For the 49ers, Deebo Samuel. Yes, he kind of had a off week per his standards. George Kittle did return, so maybe some of those targets, will diminish a little bit, but I still think he is the wide receiver to go with here for the 49ers. Brendan Ayuk did outplay him this last week, but I have him as a sit. I think this is a stingy Rams defense, and I need to see it consistently from Brendan Ayuk before I play him. And then Van Jefferson, kind of the third wide receiver here for the Rams, but I think Henderson will be more involved at the running back position, maybe get Higbee going as well. So I just don't like the upside all that much for Van Jefferson. You're going to be relying on a long touchdown basically for him to be relevant. I don't like that for fantasy purposes. So for that reason, I will sit him here. But with that, we wrap up our Week 10 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at alldaypigskin.com, and we'll see you guys in future videos.